Hello, hello. Welcome back.
Hello,
I'm Nick,
I'm Matt.
and welcome back to Nick and Matt's Everyday English Corner, episode 11. And
Yep, episode 11.
yep, we're finally in the double digits. And today we're going to be doing a fairly simple topic here. We're going to be talking about pets and animals.
Yes, and that's a topic I always enjoy because I like animals in general. So I've always got a lot to say about that.
I I don't know if I've met anyone who doesn't like animals. Like you can have your likes and dislikes, but I feel like everyone has some sort of a soft spot for at least one type of animal.
Absolutely, yeah. There's always one animal someone feels very attached to.
So with that being said, Matt, I'm gonna go ahead and just hit you with a question right out the bat here. What types of pets did you have when you were younger?
So let's see. My first pet that I remember growing up is we had actually a pig
Really?
because, yes, and I see it as a pet because, I grew up on a farm and it did have different animals, but it was mostly a lot of horses. And we only had one pig that basically had free access to walk wherever it wanted to. It wasn't being raised for anything in particular, it was just a pig that lived on the farm and was basically the equivalent of a dog. Um, its type was they usually call it a pot-belly pig, so they're very big, they're very fat, and it was a really good pet.
So you, like you said, you just kept it as if it was a dog or a cat, and you weren't using it for any particular purpose, such as, oh, I don't know, eating it or something along those
Food.
lines.
Food. I guess the only purpose it might have served was it was good at clearing out scraps of food, but I don't count that quite as much. So it basically functioned as a pet on the farm.
Clearing out scraps of food is something a lot of pets are good at, but especially pigs. Um,
They'll
that
eat a lot.
that is definitely a first time for me. Although going all the way back to our first episode that we ever recorded, I do remember you
Mm.
told me multiple times that you were raised on a farm. So that's already a very unique perspective because not just pets, but you were surrounded by a whole bunch of different animals.
Yes, I think what we had mostly horses, so I was surrounded by horses a lot. We did have a dog. We had the one pig. We had chickens, of course, and sheep. And once we even had a llama, which is similar to an alpaca, if nobody knows what that is.
A llama.
Yep, a llama.
That's crazy. Wow. Things you'll find out in rural America.
Yeah, I don't think you'll see a llama in Japan very often. I'm sure they have like alpaca zoos or things like that, but just a llama on a farm is probably pretty rare.
Yeah, I doubt it. Was was your llama an imported species or was it like native to the area?
I mean, it was definitely like born in America. I don't know if llamas were imported originally or if they were native to America. I'm not sure there about their origins.
Huh. Well, color me surprised. My, the pets I owned were a lot more, I suppose you would say, traditional. Uh, the, that is definitely quite a shock to me to hear. Well, pig, llama, and of course, just being raised on a farm is something I've never experienced in my life. So that's a really interesting perspective to hear.
Absolutely. And one thing I can say is when you're a small child, you're always being watched. The animals will actively babysit you if you're a small child.
Yeah, which is so interesting because when you're a kid, the world seems so much bigger. So I can only
Mm.
imagine that, like, being a 5, 6 year old kid and looking up and seeing this massive, towering llama over you, which is like 3 times your size, must be a pretty surreal experience looking back on it.
Absolutely. They're definitely terrifying when you're 6. But if you didn't know, they actually function as sort of like guard animals for farms. They're very aggressive to people they think do not belong.
Huh. Wow. I have already learned a lot today, and we've only been talking for 5 minutes. All right.
So here's a question then. You said you had more traditional pets. Like, what kind of pets did you have when you were younger?
So, again, nothing too crazy here. I had 3 pets throughout my
Oh.
childhood. So, this is from elementary school to high school graduation. I first had a fish, and I forget
A fish.
I forget the type of fish, but it was a very colorful, like blue reddish fish, very small, and we kept him in a tiny
Oh.
bowl. He lived for 2 years. Um, Actually, he lived longer, but we had to sell him because we moved.
I see.
Yeah, but nothing too crazy. Just you would swim around in his little bowl. He had some little furniture, if you want to call it that, like little kind of
Yeah, decorations.
decorations in the bowl. Yeah. And then when we moved, we got another pet. This was probably the most quote unquote exotic animal I owned. We owned a guinea pig, actually.
Oh, nice, a guinea pig.
Yeah, so they're like these really small rodents that they're bigger than rats, but they're also cuter than rats. And they don't have a tail, but they have like these little claws underneath them. It's like it's a mixture of feet and claws,
Yeah.
but they're freaking adorable. And
Yes, I love guinea pigs.
yeah, we had him in like a little cage. He had his home that he could hide in, and
Hmm.
cleaning the cage was an absolute pain because of the amount that they, well, poop. But
Yes.
yeah, a really, really cute pet. And then finally, when we moved back to America, we decided as a family to get a cat. And
Oh, a cat.
yeah,
Yes, one of the classic pets.
yeah, this is the we were faced with the problem of cat or dog, and no one in the family wanted to go through the effort of taking care of a dog. So we figured cats are
Ah.
very independent. They take care of themselves. They clean themselves. They don't
Hmm.
need the attention that dogs do. So we decided to get a cat. And this cat is actually still alive to this day. It's living with my sister currently.
Oh, wow. Yeah, cats can live pretty long lives. I believe if they live a healthy lifestyle, they can live up to about 16 to 20 years, I believe.
Yeah, which is insane because that's like a quarter of the average human lifespan. So you can go through a lot of uh, well, actually, no, it would be more accurate to say the opposite. You can have a cat as a pet for a large portion of your life.
Absolutely. And they make very good pets because, like you said, they don't require as much as a dog does. So they're relatively low maintenance pets, is kind of the name that they use for that.
Yeah, which is a big plus point for, well, me personally. And if the way I was describing this cat didn't give it away, I am definitely more of a cat person. That
Huh.
is 100% something I have stood by for easily over 10 years by now.
Absolutely. Now, thing that you might think is interesting, or at least amusing, is recently, when I lived in America, my roommate had a pet, and it was a ferret.
Ah,
And one of the nicknames that ferrets actually have is snake cats,
snake
because
cats.
their body is long, uh, but they have the same personality as a lot of cats, just a little bit more energy. So a lot of times people call them snake cats.
Oh, you know what? I can kind of see it. One of
Hmm.
my friends, when I lived abroad in Finland for 5 years, had two ferrets actually, and that makes a lot of sense because they're super docile and their mannerisms are quite reserved the same way cats are. But I totally see what you're saying with just how flexible those little critters are.
Absolutely. And they're an animal that's similar to cats, of course, but they have a lot more energy. So it's a very bad combination for people who can't handle them because they're very smart, very clever, and very willing to get into anything they can. Uh, which means if you don't ferret proof your house, they will escape, they'll grab things and hide them, they will hide somewhere until you bring out food. They are very difficult pets if you're not prepared.
Yeah, and they kind of fall into that same category of more non-traditional slash exotic type pets that are not nearly as common as cats or dogs and or that type of image when you think of a standard pet.
Absolutely, yeah. It's very rare that I see anyone with ferrets as pets. It's not a surprise, but it's still something you don't see very often.
Now, I want to kind of ask another question here.
Hmm.
What is either the most exotic animal you've ever owned or you've seen someone own?
Let's see. I can answer both. So the most exotic pet I've ever owned, it was only a short time, was actually a squirrel.
Really?
And yeah, it was something we found when it was a baby. It fell out of a tree and there was no mother around, so we eventually brought it in a box. And for maybe about 4 weeks, we took care of it and raised it. And then we were able to let it go after a while. When they're babies, they're very good pets. But when they become adults, they're impossible to have as pets. So we had that perfect timeline to take care of it.
Yeah, I was about to say squirrels are, I'm fairly certain, not supposed to be pets. They are very much wild animals that,
Yes. They
yeah, are not meant to be domesticated.
absolutely. They don't have the temperament to stay in captivity. So just taking care of it as a baby for that 4 or 5 week time period was perfect because they're more docile at that point. They're still learning, um, and then kind of like when they start hitting those adult years is when they actually start chewing on things. They get wild, they bite. So we avoided that altogether by letting them go back out into the wild.
And that's probably for the best, although I
Yes.
imagine you do get a bit attached to a small, cute animal.
Oh, absolutely. They're very cute. Because one of the things it used to love to do was, while walking around, it did not like to be alone. So it would run after you and then climb up onto your shoulder. So it would go with you wherever you went.
Ah, that's adorable.
So how about you? What's the most exotic pet you've ever owned or at least seen somebody own?
Well, like I said, I only really own traditional pets.
Hmm.
But the most exotic animal, or just something that's not something you typically see in an
Hmm.
everyday household, was it was like a friend of a friend, if I remember correctly. Um, he had a snake.
Oh, absolutely. Do you know what kind of snake it was?
Uh, it wasn't anything poisonous. I know that.
Hmm.
I don't know snake breeds that well, but it was a very standard, definitely on, definitely on the smaller side because it had a fairly small little pen that it was in, and it would just kind of hang out most of the day. Didn't do anything too crazy, but when you're a kid and you hear that someone owns something like a snake, you naturally kind of want to see that.
Oh yes, they make really cool pets when you're a kid. I think the most common pet snake are pythons. Um, they're the ones that like to squeeze their prey, and they not really poisonous. They don't really bite. So a lot of the smaller pythons make really good pets.
Yeah, having a big one would, if anything, freak me out because if it starts like coiling its way around you like at night, uh, you might think that you're the food. So the smaller ones would definitely give me a little bit more peace of mind. But still, I don't think I would ever want to actually own a snake.
Absolutely, they seem like they'd be a bit too high maintenance for me. I think the most exotic pet I've seen somebody own was a jumping spider.
A
Um,
what?
a jumping spider. They are what I can confirm is the most adorable looking spider you have never seen. Because most spiders look pretty scary, even to me. I don't mind them, but spiders do have that terrifying image. But this spider is the only exception because it has these big eyes up front and they have a small body. So they actually look cute compared to any other spider.
Oh, you know what? No, I have seen pictures of those. Yeah, those things are absolutely friggin' adorable.
Yes. And the best part is they're not venomous, they're not poisonous, so they're actually safe to own as pets.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever known anyone who owned a spider, but I have heard of people who get these massive, for example, tarantulas, and just keep
Ah,
them in a
tarantulas.
glass box. And now tarantulas are terrifying. They're huge. Their their legs alone are like the size of their entire body. That
Yeah, I
freaks
believe
me
a
out
lot of
personally.
especially because a lot of them are very big. I believe most tarantulas can fit in the palm of your hand just barely, which is absolutely massive for a spider.
Yeah, that gives me goosebumps just thinking about that. And again, a pet I would absolutely never own, but I would like to see from a distance and say, "Oh, that's neat. It's neat that you own that."
Absolutely. And I think a more pet that's coming more common is a lot of people are keeping rabbits more often. I know schools keep them as pets, but I know a lot of people are keeping them more as well.
It's interesting. I would actually consider rabbits to be more of a conventional pet,
Hmm.
air quotes. Uh, I I used to know people who owned rabbits, like multiple different families that had rabbits.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, it's actually I feel more common than you think.
I see. I didn't have that much experience with people keeping them as pets, so I thought they were a little bit more rare to have.
I'm sure there's different types because obviously there are a ton of wild rabbits, but
Hmm.
yeah, like when you think of the stereotypical bunny rabbit, I do not hesitate to think of people who keep them as pets.
Absolutely. And I've heard they do make very good pets. They have a different temperament than dogs or cats, but once you get used to that, they're very affectionate.
Yeah, and as a final note before we end off the
Hmm.
podcast here, now that we've talked about so many different types of animals, I do kind of want to bring this full circle here and ask about probably the two most stereotypical pets that everyone thinks of: cats and dogs. More specifically, what is your favorite? Do you Are you more of a dog person or are you more of a cat person?
I like dogs more than cats, but if I had the choice of which one I would actually have as a pet, it would be a cat. Just for the same reason you mentioned, they are low maintenance pets.
And there's really not much more to say than that, is there? Uh,
Yeah.
Dogs require so much work. You have to clean them, you have to walk them, you have to give them attention. And for
Mm.
a lot of people, they enjoy that work because it's in a different way. It's like raising a child, but it's a lot more, well, it's hard in a different way.
It is. And I believe that's a mindset to go into because dogs deserve that attention. They deserve to be trained. They deserve to basically have that healthy lifestyle where they get attention. And if you can't give them that attention, then it becomes a lot more problematic. So I believe anyone looking to get a pet dog has to be aware of what they need to actually invest into actually having a pet dog.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, which is the main reason why we didn't want to get a dog, because we felt like the environment and the commitment of our family to actually giving the dog the love it deserved was just not going to come to fruition. Just because we were all busy and we all had things to do, so a cat was naturally just the right choice to make.
Absolutely. I definitely agree.
But the one thing I will say about dogs is if you want to talk about loving a pet, dogs will show you the unconditional love that you give to them. They will give it right back to you every single day you come home from work. And I feel like that really is one of the big appeals of owning a dog.
Absolutely. If you get excited, they get excited. Anytime that you want to like cuddle or hug, a dog is always ready for that. So it is really about like the energy you invest, and dogs will always give it back. That is absolutely something I agree with.
Yeah, and that's not to say that cats don't show that affection, but they do it when they want to. They're very much on their own schedule because, like we said earlier, they're independent animals. They take care of themselves, and when they feel like cuddling up to you, they'll cuddle up to you. But uh, if you want to approach them, there's a good chance they'll just either run away or just pretend you don't exist.
Absolutely, yes. Cats are on their own terms. They will come and cuddle with you when they want to. They will give you attention when they want to. So it's definitely a very different temperament in an animal. And they're very cute and very cuddly, but sometimes when you get home and you want to pet your cat, you want to cuddle, and they're not in the mood, it can be a little disheartening.
And that's not to say that's a bad thing. Again,
No, it's not. Yeah.
there's a reason people are either a dog person or a cat person because everyone's different. And I remember when I was still in high school, one of my teachers had an amazing saying for the difference between dogs and cats. The difference is when you provide all this unconditional love to a dog, the dog looks at you and thinks you must be a god. Whereas with a cat, you do the exact same work, you put in the exact same amount of effort to love them, raise them, and then the cat thinks I must be a god.
Yes. They have a completely different mindset. And I think that's the perfect thing to kind of finish off with is just how different each animal thinks.
Yeah, it's there. We have different tastes for a reason, but to each their own is something I always say.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that'll do it here for us. Um, It's been Nick and Matt's Everyday English Corner, episode 11, pets. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you
Thanks
next
for
time.
tuning in. See you next time.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.